The camera opens on a quiet bedroom. A soft sunrise filters through pale curtains. A woman in her early 40s, elegant but clearly weighed down, stands in front of her mirror. Her closet door is wide open. Dresses hang like forgotten memories. She touches a silk blouse but doesn't pull it out. Her reflection is tired, but her eyes still hold a spark. Voiceover. They say fashion is just fabric, but when you've lost everything, even fabric can feel like armor. Cut to a close-up of her hand running along the hangers. Voiceover continues. I wasn't always like this. But when he left, so did the version of me I'd spent years dressing up for. My name is Elise. I'm a mother of 2 grown kids. I run a boutique fashion business online, and 3 months ago, my husband of 20 years packed a single bag and left me a note on the kitchen counter. Not a conversation, not a warning, just a note. That morning, I wore pajamas until 3 p.m. and cried into a mismatched cardigan. I felt invisible in my own skin. But this isn't a story about grief. It's about rediscovery, about how I stopped dressing for someone who walked away and started dressing for the woman still standing in the mirror. The first week, I didn't touch my makeup. I wore my late mother's old robe like a shroud. Every outfit reminded me of a dinner, a date, a kiss, all now haunted. My daughter FaceTimed me and said, "Mom, you look like a ghost." It wasn't rude. It was true. That's when I pulled out my fashion journal, a leather-bound book where I used to scribble sketches, color palettes, and style ideas when I felt alive. And that night, I wrote just 3 words. Who am I? The next day, I stood in front of my wardrobe again. I didn't look for what he liked. I looked for what made me feel. I found a mustard yellow wrap dress I hadn't worn in years. The one I thought was too loud. But when I slipped it on, I didn't feel sad. I felt seen. At the grocery store, a woman complimented me in the checkout line. "That's a gorgeous color on you." And I smiled, really smiled, for the first time in weeks. That's when I realized something. I didn't need a man to tell me who I was. My style had been waiting for me to show up all along. That week became an experiment. Every day, I challenged myself to wear something different, something just for me. A bright green blouse I used to be scared of. Patterned wide-leg pants I bought on impulse, but never dared wear. I even wore heels on a Sunday afternoon, just to bake cookies. Why? Because I could. Fashion became therapy. And each outfit became a layer I shed from the past, and a layer I added toward becoming me. My daughter noticed. My friends started commenting on my Instagram again. My boutique sales went up. But most importantly, I started seeing a woman in the mirror who didn't need fixing. She needed freedom. Then, something happened that I didn't expect. One rainy Thursday, my ex's best friend, Mark, stopped by. He came to pick up some of his buddy's old tools from the garage. We hadn't spoken since the split. I was wearing high-waisted jeans, a French tucked cream blouse, and my favorite chunky necklace. Hair in a bun. No apology in sight. He blinked. "You look incredible." I laughed. "It's laundry day." He smiled. "Then laundry day is winning." We had coffee. Just coffee. But it was the first time a man looked at me not with pity, but with curiosity. And I realized maybe, just maybe, I wasn't broken. Maybe I was blooming. By the end of that week, I did something terrifying. I booked a solo weekend trip to Santa Fe. I packed outfits for me. Flowy skirts, sun hats, layered jewelry. I wore red lipstick in broad daylight. I walked into galleries and smiled at strangers. I dined alone without shame. I felt like a woman who had found her edge again. But here's the twist. On that last evening in Santa Fe, I got a message from Mark. "I can't stop thinking about you. Can we talk when you get back?" And just like that, my heart skipped. Not because I needed saving, but because I realized I was worth being chosen again. Voiceover as camera pans to Elise laying out a pair of bold red heels next to a little black dress. Style isn't about who you were. It's about who you're becoming. And sometimes the most powerful look you can wear is your confidence. Fade to black. To be continued. The screen fades in from black to soft jazz music playing in the background. Elise is back from her solo trip, standing in her kitchen in a loose bohemian maxi dress, pouring herself coffee with a calm smile on her face. There's something different about her now, something quietly self-assured. Voiceover. I didn't go to Santa Fe to find love, I went to find myself. But sometimes, when you finally stop searching, the right things find you. The morning I returned home, everything felt lighter. The air, the walls, even the silence. For the first time in months, I wasn't dressing to fill a void. I was dressing to celebrate it. That Monday, I slipped on a pair of burnt orange culottes with a cream linen shirt. Half-tucked, of course. I added a belt with a gold buckle and wore it like a badge of honor. That's when my phone buzzed. "Mark, lunch? My treat. I owe you for the best coffee I've ever had." I stared at the screen. For a moment, I hesitated. Was this a rebound? Was I just a reminder of his friend's past life? But then I caught sight of myself in the mirror near the front door. The woman staring back wasn't a substitute. She was a statement. I texted back. 12:30. My favorite cafe. Dress code. Anything but beige. He showed up in navy chinos, a casual jacket, and a maroon tee. He understood the assignment. Lunch was easy. Too easy. He didn't bring up the divorce. He didn't mention my ex. Instead, we talked about art, music, and somehow, my boutique's recent success. "You're glowing," he said at one point. I smiled. "I think it's just the bronzer." But deep down, I knew better. That afternoon, we walked through a nearby pop-up market. I saw a silk scarf, rich burgundy with tiny gold stars. "Mark bought it for me before I could argue." "You light up like this scarf," he said. I wore it the next day with a navy blouse and jeans, tied loosely at my neck like an exclamation point. But let's pause here for a second. This story isn't about falling for a man. It's about falling back in love with myself. And fashion became my compass. I started a personal challenge for my boutique clients called #Styled to Stand. Each day for 14 days, they had to dress not for their job, not for their partner, but for the version of themselves they were becoming. We had women in their 50s trying crop jackets. Moms in messy buns rocking red stilettos just to go buy milk. Style was becoming rebellion. Liberation. Of course, not everyone applauded. My ex-mother-in-law called me. "I saw your Instagram. Elise, are you okay?" I laughed. I've never been better. Even my own daughter raised an eyebrow one day when I came down wearing a structured blazer over a silk camisole. "Wow, Mom, who are you going to impress?" I sipped my coffee and said, "Myself. Every damn day." Then came that dinner. Mark invited me over for homemade pasta. I wore a fitted black knit dress, my new gold-studded boots, and smoky eyeliner for the first time in forever. When he opened the door, he actually paused. "If I knew you were showing up looking like this, I'd have cooked something fancier than pasta." We laughed. We danced in the living room to a playlist full of 2000s throwbacks. And then, somewhere between laughs and lingering glances, he kissed me. It wasn't a dramatic movie moment. It was soft, intentional, like a thread being tied, not a fuse being lit. But that night, lying in his arms, I didn't feel like I was betraying my past. I felt like I was honoring my future. Still, doubts crept in. Was I moving too fast? Was I ready? Was this real or just a reaction? The next morning, I didn't stay for breakfast. Voiceover, as Elise folds the burgundy scarf and places it gently into a drawer. Growth isn't linear. Sometimes healing wears heels. Sometimes it walks away, not out of fear, but out of clarity. I needed space. Not from Mark, but from the temptation to turn a chapter too quickly. I texted him. "Thank you. That meant more than you know. But I need time to walk this path a little further. Alone." His reply came minutes later. "Take all the time you need. I'll be here if your path ever leads back this way." And that was the moment I knew it wasn't about whether someone wanted me in place of another. It was about whether I finally wanted me. Back at home, I stood in front of the mirror again. Today's outfit? A flowy green wrap dress, wide belt, minimal makeup, and a headscarf. Not to impress, not to rebound, but to reflect. My boutique was growing. My confidence had returned. And even if I never wore a wedding ring again, I'd wear my worth every single day. Fade to black. To be continued. Fade in. Elise walks into her boutique, phone tucked under one ear, arms full of fabric swatches and design samples. Sunlight streams through the shopfront windows, illuminating the mannequins dressed in bold, expressive styles. The store buzzes with life. 2 assistants organizing new arrivals, a customer trying on an emerald pantsuit, a child giggling near a mirror. Voiceover. When I stopped dressing for someone else, my world didn't fall apart, it expanded. 2 months had passed since I last saw Mark. The silence wasn't heavy, it was purposeful. In that space, I found a rhythm. I started designing again. I launched a new clothing line, *Resurge. Every piece was based on women I met during my #StyledToStand challenge. Women rediscovering power in color, silhouette, and self. Each item told a story. A widow who wore cobalt blue because it reminded her of the sea her husband loved. A nurse who traded scrubs for floral jumpsuits on weekends, just to feel different. A woman who hadn't worn heels since her diagnosis, and then posted herself in stilettos, standing in a hospital hallway, victorious. I was building something beautiful out of pieces I once thought were broken. Then one evening, the past came knocking. Literally. I opened the door and there he stood, my ex-husband. He looked older, worn, but mostly unsure. "Hi, Elise. I was just in the neighborhood. Thought I'd check in." I didn't invite him in. We talked on the porch. He asked about the kids. I gave short, warm answers. Then he said the thing that used to paralyze me. "You look incredible. I've missed this." "Missed you?" I didn't smile. I didn't flinch. I said, "You left. And I found me. So thank you." He nodded slowly, and for the first time, I think he realized I wasn't his anymore. Not in name. Not in style. Not in soul. He left quietly. And I walked back inside, shutting the door on the version of me who used to wait to be chosen. Later that night, my phone buzzed. "Mark, still walking that path?" I stared at the message for a moment. Then, heart steady, I called him. "Still walking," I said. "But I think I'm ready to walk with someone now. If you're still there." His voice smiled through the line. I never moved. A few weeks later, we met for coffee again. No pressure. No declarations. Just warmth. He asked about my new line. I showed him the sketches, the catalog, the community posts flooding in. He was genuinely amazed. "You turned heartbreak into a movement," he said. I laughed. "I turned it into a wardrobe first." We started seeing each other more regularly. There were no games. No rush. Just presence. It was like styling a perfect outfit. You build it piece by piece until it feels just right. On our third date, I wore a burnt orange blazer over a deep teal silk top, gold hoops, and bootcut jeans. He looked me over and said, "You always dress like a revolution." And I replied, "I am one." Months passed. Life grew fuller, not just with romance, but with intention. My daughter started interning at the boutique. My online following tripled. I hosted a live panel on style and emotional healing. Women tuned in from 23 countries. The boutique had become more than a shop. It was a space where stories, struggles, and triumphs were woven into fabric. Then came a surprise. Mark invited me to a gallery opening. I wore a velvet green wrap gown, vintage heels, and a satin clutch. As we walked in, people turned. Not just because of what I wore, but how I carried it. Midway through the evening, Mark leaned in and whispered, "You changed everything, you know. Not just your look, but your life." I smiled. Sometimes, fashion isn't about what you wear, it's about what you leave behind. And he said, "I'm glad you didn't leave me behind." That night, under stars, I kissed him, not from loneliness, but from fullness. Voiceover as we fade to Elise walking down a boutique aisle, straightening garments and smiling at her reflection in the glass. Style isn't a mask, it's a mirror. And when you finally see yourself clearly, the world starts to reflect your light right back. Final shot. Elise standing outside her boutique, locking up for the night. She turns, faces the camera, and gives a confident smile. The sign above the door reads, "Resurge, style that rises." Fade to black. The end.